Lorie Graham has been a staple in the news media world for over 2 decades as a weather specialist for CTV Montreal. She has hosted Good Morning Canada, the network's national weekend morning show, as well as CTV's Telethon of Stars. She has had a celebrated career, but if you read her CTV bio, you'll see that Lorie feels most blessed when she's serving alongside members of her church family. Recently, I had the opportunity to talk with Lorie and hear about her faith journey. This is Lorie Graham. Well, welcome, Lorie, to 700 Club Canada.
Thank you so much, Lorie. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be with your audience today.
Well, you and I had a chat a while back, and you shared with me your story. I mean, you've been broadcasting with CTV in Montreal for over 20 years, and you've led a successful life, and some might say a rather glamorous life, but not all was great. Would you take us back before you found Jesus and share a little bit of your story with us?
Absolutely. I guess I have to start by saying, that I always really had a belief in God, and as you mentioned, yes, I did have a very blessed life. I mean, I had a great family, I had loving parents, I had a happy childhood, a great education, a job that I loved. But despite all of that, I still felt that there was something missing. There was this little hole in my heart. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But I thought that, once I found the right relationship and had a family, that would be the missing puzzle piece that I was looking for. But of course it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe you pursued that in all kinds of ways, right? What did that
Ab-
look like?
Absolutely. And after several relationships, there was one particular heartbreak that really brought me to my knees. And I think it was at that point that I just really cried out to God for the first time and said, Lord, if you are real, make yourself real to me. I don't want to do this anymore on my own. Clearly, it's not working. Our God is such a God of grace because the minute we take one step towards him, he takes two steps towards us. And that's when he brought Pastor Rick Warren's Purpose Driven Life into my life. And I should say he brought it back into my life because someone had actually given me that book years before. And I remember picking it up, opening it, reading that first line, "It's not about you," and thinking, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. Closing the book, putting it back on the shelf and thinking,
Wow.
I'll get to that one day. I'll read it one day. And of course, God brought it back into my life in a moment where he knew that I really needed it. And this was really an awakening for me because this was the first time that I realized that, God didn't want to just be there through the sadness and the sorrow, but that he wanted a genuine relationship with me every day. And so was a light bulb moment, and as Rick Warren describes in his book, our life is like a pie and God doesn't want to just be a sliver of the pie. He wants to be at the center of the pie. He wants to be part of every single decision that we make. But even at that point, it's not like life was roses after that. It wasn't all uphill after that. Shortly after that, I shared my testimony with somebody and really felt that, that I was ready to get married and got engaged to someone. And then realized that this was not the person that God was calling me to be with. And, that was a very painful time, a very difficult time, because, in the same way that God wants to be at the center of our lives, I realized that he wants to be at the center of every decision that we make. And I had made this decision and just expected his sort of stamp of approval on it, and I realized later that, God really only blesses the plans that he pre-approves. And so as I was growing deeper in my faith, I realized that, God was testing me here, that he was asking for obedience. And, Proverbs 3:5-6 came up repeatedly, trust the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. And I didn't know what he had in store for me, but I knew that he was just asking me to trust him. And so as painful as it was, I had to let go.
Yeah. Wow. You know what? I just love that. First of all, your surrender story. I mean, I love Rick Warren's book. I mean, what an awakening that book has been to so many. And you told me you were baptized by Rick Warren. You actually went to his church and he was there and he baptized you. So that was really your foundational marking moment of this change in your life. Isn't that right?
It really was. I mean, as I was reading the book, I had this idea in mind that, maybe one day I would go to California, maybe one day I would go to Saddleback Church, but that happened a lot sooner than I thought. And yes, I did have the privilege to meet Rick Warren, to tell him how his book changed my life, and was eventually baptized by him. But it was really after I had surrendered that relationship that I drew closer to Jesus. And that's when I really fell in love with Jesus. And I really had a deeper understanding of who he was and his character. He was asking me to trust him, and he was able to heal me and restore me and give me his peace that surpasses understanding. And he was able to fill me with his joy and his love. And so it was just pouring out on the people around me. I didn't know what he was going to do in my life, but I knew that he was just asking me to know him, to love him, and to serve him through serving my community. And I think the real turning point for me was, I was hosting a small group with women. And one of the study questions was, what is it that you want God to do most in your life? And I realized that I had written down, I want to know him more and I want more wisdom. And I hadn't even realized the impact of what I had written until the next day when I got up and I reread it. And I thought, wow, here I am now wanting the blesser more than just the blessing. And so this was a real turning point. And I said, God, if you don't do anything for me ever again in my life, you have done everything for me. And if you never bring anyone into my life, you have brought the one who has given his life for me. And that's Jesus.
Well, that's it, Lorie. What would you say to those listening thinking, I have a successful, comfortable life. Do I really need Jesus? Like, what difference will he make? What would you say to them?
It's so funny because I just read this line today and it was shared to me by a close friend. And it says, sometimes God needs to open our hands to fill our hearts. And I thought, wow, that is so true. And Psalm 37, 4-7 keeps coming to mind, take delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Take delight in him, know him, love him, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And sometimes those desires are not quite what we think they are, but over time, as we draw closer to him, our will becomes aligned with his, our desires become his desires for his life, and ultimately, I guess he had to get me to that point to eventually bring the man into my life that I would eventually marry, and this man is more than I could have ever dreamed or imagined. And now I'm a stepmom to 4 beautiful girls. And he has just filled me with a love that I just didn't think possible.
Yeah, well, God gives us far more than we even know how to ask for, right? Thank you for sharing your story with us, Lorie. Thank you for who you are in the media in Canada. May God continue to use you in your work and also as you bless others. And thank you for opening up yourself to us to share your personal love of Jesus. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Lorie, and God bless your ministry.
Thank you.